inherently in letting go, there's going to be problems and failures and wasted material. But I have to let that happen, because once that happens, then we can be like, okay, here's where we went wrong, and they'll learn from that, versus me holding their hand every step of the way and being in there, right? Then nobody learns, and then they become dependent on me being there. I mean, you probably heard it a million times, but you need to work on the business, not in the business. So one of the things I'm working on is everything that we're building, where's my exit from this piece of the business? And we do need to delegate. We need to hand off a lot of these pieces.
You're asking yourself, why am I doing this?
Smart people would know how to use all these different tools. They start with something small.
You'll never get your entire organization if you don't pull off operations. Don't give up.
It can be as small as that.
I think you guys are going to have our last debate.
What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Delegate That podcast, where we discuss the art and science of delegation, business management, and leadership. I'm your host, Adam Labar, and today I am stoked to have a good conversation with Darren Christensen. Darren, if you can, please go ahead and introduce yourself and tell us about your business.
Hi, cheers, Adam. Thanks for having me on. I'm Darren Christensen out of Austin, Texas, and I own a prefab manufacturing facility that focuses on affordable housing and hospitality lodging.
Very good. All right. So how long have you been doing affordable housing and hospitality lodging?
About a year and a half.
And what kind of got you started in doing that?
Everything I've done has been an evolution to make processes and resources more efficient, or use of resources. So we started out doing your standard, fix and flips, which is a pretty terrible thing for taxes. Doing that, getting into bigger stuff, doing ground up construction, and then working into some of the small scale residential development. I love taking things from the ground up, and I love being able to own as many processes along the way as possible, because that's where all your margin is made. And then we got into some prefab development, bringing in modular homes with essentially a pilot project that we did, and everything that could go wrong did go wrong, and it was an absolute nightmare. And it just pushed me to, I could do this better. I'm going to do it better myself. And we spent a good amount of time looking to partner with another company, looking for supply of modular homes. And this was in 2020 to 2022, and wasn't having a whole lot of luck there. So I ended up just saying, screw it, I'll just build everything myself. And we built a MVP, a minimum viable product factory, on some land I already had. And then we started working out all the failure points of the business model and all the things I didn't know.
Do you feel overwhelmed with mundane tasks that eat up your valuable time? It's time to reclaim your schedule and focus on what truly matters. Get your time back with elite remote talent without a time zone hassle. Delegate $10 an hour tasks to focus on more $1,000 an hour tasks. Schedule your free strategy call at wisevas.io.
Very cool. So as you were kind of building out what you did before this, right? I mean, you mentioned kind of having all the processes helps with the margin. How did you kind of start to figure that out? And what did you do to make sure that you owned all the processes in what you were doing before that you were then able to apply as you were building out ModMod?
I think a lot of it came from being stubborn and getting bids back that were higher and higher and higher. And I'm like, there's no way that it costs this much to do these things. So I would go to YouTube University and I'd learn how to do it, and I'd practice, and I'd get a good basis for things. And then I would just keep integrating those. And then I would bring people on to my staff or my crew that could do it. And when I'm paying them into my crew, you're paying them, a good salary, but it's nothing like the outrageous prices that you're paying for a third-party contractor.
Yeah, for sure. As you were kind of figuring all that out, right? You mentioned going to YouTube University to kind of teach yourself how to do it, and then go find somebody to do it for you. What was that process like for you? What kind of hiccups did you find in the application of learning it yourself to hiring somebody?
Generally, with anything I start, I just love finding efficiencies in things. So I will keep doing something in iteration after iteration and find a more efficient way to do it, and then find a more cost-effective way to do it beyond that. So do I need all these expensive tools to do it, or can I simplify the processes down and do it with simpler tools and less skilled labor. That's a big thing, especially in manufacturing. Anything is your line time is king. So anytime you can do something faster without compromising safety or quality, then that's the goal.
Very cool. I know hiring is one of those things that is extremely difficult to kind of find the right people. And you mentioned bringing in low skilled labor, meaning that you don't need it to have a specific expertise because you've narrowed down how to make it happen without that specific expertise. What kind of trial and error did you have to go through to find the right low skilled labor that is still the right strong work ethic and trustworthiness to be able to bring into your company and own that process?
That's still evolving, but we set expectations up front. Like here's what's expected of you. Here's the things that we're going to provide for you. And I think a lot goes for retainership of people when they know that they're supported and they know that what I say is true. So I've caught some guys doing things just like figuring things out multiple times because they didn't know how to do something up front. And I said, we've got high-speed internet. Get on YouTube, watch a 5-minute video or a couple of videos and figure out how to do it so that you from the get-go know how to do it, right? And then they're doing it properly, not having to figure it out. Because if you're not doing something on a regular basis, then it could take you 2-3 years of sporadic use of that skill to really get a good grasp on what you're doing. So I'm completely fine with them on their phone, watching some YouTube videos and getting that 80% of the learning curve out of the way. And then they're wasting less of my materials, right? And they're wasting less time down the road. And I think that's pretty cool. And then when they do need a tool or they need a different, set of supplies to do something, or their particular skill set says, hey, I'm much more efficient if I have this thing, which generally aren't big things. They want like a different kind of paint roller or something. And then the next day they have it. And then they feel really good and supported and continue to improve the processes. And we also have a bonus program for any time that they find a better way to do something, and then we can implement it. And again, it doesn't cost us on time or safety or quality. Then they get $100 bonus just for saying, hey, I think we could do this. And so that always keeps them, on the hunt for a better way to do things.
For sure. Yeah. And, the Air Force, I told you before we started recording, I was in the military for a long time, and the Air Force had a program like the IDEA program that if you came up with an idea, you could get, they used to be like a percentage of the savings, and they stopped doing that because some savings became pretty astronomical. And that's, but it turned into, small bonuses or a 4-day weekend or something like that for you. And I think those types of incentives work really well for folks who are, they're the ones in there doing the work and they're putting their hands down and trying to figure this out. So now, Besides that, right? I mean, you have somebody that's watching YouTube University, they're learning how to do it. They're incentivized to kind of go find these things. How do you, or do you implement like written processes to make sure that now these things are always followed, like to make sure that hey, there's a standard operating procedure. This is how we follow it. You just learn something, go ahead and edit it to SOP. Like what sort of processes do you have inside the company to make sure that everybody's following the right steps to make sure that everything's done correctly?
So when you're building, we have plans, right? So we've got engineered plans and we have fastener schedules and things. So there's a broad structure of things that we're going to be following. And then we keep notebooks of every project that we do. And here are things that we changed from this iteration to the next iteration, from this project to another project. So that's another cool thing about doing things that are similar. And we can look back and see what we did, and we can say, all right, well, we need to change this, or this is a better way here. And we teach what we did the last time, essentially, whenever we bring somebody new on. And there's not a whole lot that we can't teach somebody and bring them up to speed really quickly. But it's more being present, because we're still evolving, and we're still cutting a lot of time off of what we're doing on the factory floor. So it's not something like I've got a notebook and I can hand it to you. We've got a notebook that's here's what we did last time, which evolved from the previous time, which evolved from the previous time. And if we need to look back and say, hey, this now affects some other process, then we can figure that piece out. And then we've got stupid spreadsheets on every single piece that goes into things. And and tracking like every fastener, which there's thousands of them, but we can calculate the weight of the entire house.
Okay.
So we're constantly evolving on our processes. So we're looking back at previous ones, taking a lot of notes, and then teaching to what we've done the last time. And then, yeah, it's just, we're going to keep evolving and cutting time and making the processes more efficient. Where we're at right now, we're taking 8 to 12 weeks to build a house, and we want to get that down to 2 weeks. So there's a lot of efficiencies that need to happen, and a lot of that also happens with doing production runs of things. So when we're doing the same thing, making the same cut several times, that helps a lot too.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, that's going to be extreme to go from 8 to 10 weeks to 2 weeks. What is the average for a modular home to be built in different factories, right? I mean, you talked about how a lot of outsourcing is being done and whatnot. You're trying to keep all that internal. What's the average length of time to create one of those in a different factory?
I'd say they're in the same realm. If it's something simple that they've got plans for, it could be a month in production. It's the point where your production happens from the start of that to it coming off the line and being transported. So there's generally more time up front in the planning stage than there is actually being built.
Okay, so as you were kind of building this idea out in your head, how do you go from concept to creation of this business to say, hey, this is where I think that I can create all of these efficiencies. This is where, I mean, obviously you mentioned earlier seeing like, hey, like I feel like I could just go to YouTube and learn some how to do this, but there's a difference between going to YouTube, learning how to do something, and then creating a business and trying to make this happen. So how did that kind of the founding of this kind of develop over the years?
Yeah, I mean, I'd spent like 15 years building prior to that. So I had a pretty good grasp of the basics of it. And then, like I said, we'd done our trial development with using prefab stuff. And then we'd been in and around the industry for a couple of years. I'm always going to take a step first. So the ready, fire, aim tactic, I'm just going to get in the line of fire and I'm going to get in there and do something. And I'm going to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And then we'll just keep refining it. There's so many people that get caught up on the how and trying to make something perfect before they launch. And it's not feasible. You'll never get anywhere. Where I'll crash and burn over and over and over again, but I'll have iterated 15 times before most people even take their first step. And we've carried that through the business. And I just know that I'm still here and I have irrefutable proof that nothing I've done's killed me yet. Or, I haven't been able to accomplish something that I've set out to do. It's just been a series of pivots.
And I think entrepreneurship is basically that, just pivoting, making it happen, pivot, make it happen. There's always that analogy of using airplanes, right? Where they're constantly changing direction the entire time they're on the flight path. And honestly, they even start to go to your ready, fire, aim. An airplane even starts in the complete wrong direction because it's all about just starting, right? Where's the wind coming from? All right, face the wind and go, right? And then we'll figure out how to get there from there. So it's an iteration process for sure all the time. So I'm assuming that you're raising capital for this type of thing, and is there a fund behind this, or are you just like independently wealthy from your previous stuff that you're just kind of funding all this yourself? How do you put all this together?
I did raise some capital as hard money just to build the factory itself, and I haven't raised anything else. I haven't been successful at raising money. There's a huge need for this, but we're doing something slightly different. So I constantly was getting the answer of, I'd love to invest in this once you've proven the model thing. And so I'm not independently wealthy. I've invested in things, but I've dumped millions into this myself. And I've dumped absolutely everything I have into the business to where, you've seen those memes about an entrepreneur's bank account. So several $100,000 to negative 50,000 to, I got $1.27. And it's completely true. It's been, there's the founder's journey of something, where you're building something huge and you've got a passion behind it. And it doesn't matter what's in your way because you've got a mission to solve. And that's where we're at. We're quietly building $1 billion business over here, but it's not without struggle and all the other pieces that come with it.
So what differentiates you from anybody else that's kind of building one of these things? Like what, obviously, you're passionate about it and you're looking for that, but what differentiates you from somebody else as they're looking at all this?
When I got into it, there was, I guess, two parties of industry that we're in here. And I think it's a little more nuanced than that, but in broad strokes, there's the mobile home industry that controls a lot of the modular industry. So it's just a code set above. Mobile homes are built to a different standard, which isn't nearly as regulated, but they inherently control most of the industry of things that are built to modular code, which essentially means it's built to standard residential housing code or international building code. And modular means that it appraises the same as something that's site built and is legally indistinguishable from something that's site built. But you combine the modular or the mobile home industry with that or the manufactured, and there's just all their supporting systems are crap. And the building styles and the setup crews or anything aren't set up for anything that's going to be around long term. Now they've got tons of industry and capacity, but when I look at an asset, I want it to hold strong for me. I don't want to have to be having a huge capital dump into a home 10 years from now. And you get that with the manufactured industry. They inherently build things as cheaply as possible. And I don't really like that. On the other end of it, there are architects that build something beautiful and have a vision for their legacy piece of things that they want to get out there. And you get a lot of these niche or boutique things. And the problem with architects is they can't keep a timeline or a budget. So it's not something that's great for business, long term. And I'm coming in and building a product that will last generations with very little to no maintenance. And anything that needs to be maintained is easy to get to and easy to replace. There's no custom fabrications of anything crazy. As before I got into all this, I was a master tech for BMW. So I started out in engineering at Texas A&M and then got into the other side of it and became a master tech for BMW. And there's this huge divide between the engineers and the techs that work on the cars. And a lot of times they don't work together to make something easy to work on. And I think that's inherently flawed. If we build something that you want to maintain or you want to last, you need to be able to work on it and replace something fairly easy. And then we just use materials that are industry leading lifetime warranty stuff that just don't need the maintenance. And a lot of times, a lot of these companies will look solely at the upfront sticker price of materials. And there's so much more to the story because I can spend 2 or 3 times as much on material and still be ahead because it was so much easier to install. Like it saved me so much time. And again, that's where we come into line time on a factory floor is that's king. The more time that you can cut out of something is king. So I don't inherently look at the cost of materials. For example, the walls that we use, we don't use drywall. Where drywall may cost in material 50 cents a square foot or something, I'm at $1.50 to $2 a square foot in just a material cost. We use a furniture grade hardwood plywood for the walls. Now we finish it and it can look exactly like a smooth finish drywall. But 1, you can't punch a hole through it because it's plywood. And 2, we don't have any of the labor involved with finishing out the drywall, nor do we have any of the moisture introduced into the home, which takes a lot of time to dry out or can run into other issues of creating mold or mustiness in the home. So it cuts out a lot of time simply because we use a product that's easier to work with.
So as you're kind of learning all these processes and putting the right people in place, what sort of management operations have you had to apply to make sure that the leadership team is kind of all on the same page, putting things in the right place, making sure the right build is happening, and is maintaining the quality and vision that you have as you're pushing it forward?
The first thing I have to do is let go, which is hard because I created all of this. And inherently in letting go, there's going to be problems and failures and wasted material. But I have to let that happen because once that happens, then we can be like, okay, here's where we went wrong. And they'll learn from that versus me holding their hand every step of the way and being in there. right, then nobody learns, and then they become dependent on me being there. I mean, you probably heard it a million times, but you need to work on the business, not in the business. So one of the things I'm working on is everything that we're building, where's my exit from this piece of the business? And we do need to delegate. We need to hand off a lot of these pieces. And it's not seamless. I haven't figured that piece out yet, but it is being the visionary of the business. I'm much more suited to the ideas and the creation and the connections versus the building of everything, which I'm fascinated by it, but I'll get bored of it after a period of time.
And you got to go with what's the highest and best use of your time, and then find somebody and plug them in. What's the highest and best use of their time to do the things that you shouldn't be. And, that's just no matter where you're at, that's a process that you have to do. So what has been kind of one of the biggest struggles that you've had kind of putting all of this together and making sure that you have the right team and doing all of that? What's some of the biggest struggles that you've had?
It's been the financial piece of it and keeping everything running, and something this big. Anybody can be a contractor. Anybody can have a truck and, a toolbox, and there's very little overhead in doing that. But there's also not a whole lot of margin on any side of it. So to build a factory and to create all those pieces, to have every step of everything vertically integrated into the business is a lot. And I'm coming out of Chapter 11 bankruptcy right now, where we had a lender say, oh, well, this is going to be due in full, and we couldn't refinance it at that particular point in time. So our only thing was Chapter 11 bankruptcy, which is, I guess, rich people bankruptcy. You don't lose any control of any of your assets, but you have to reorganize some things. And that has been, I love my life. I love what I do. I've got good balance and everything. But having some government official poke their nose into every aspect of what you're doing when they've never created anything, they've never run a business, but they question everything that you're doing, that's probably been the hardest piece. And the staffing piece has been fine. We've had some guys come and go. We're still learning on that. But yeah, that's been it. And getting it to a point where everything funds itself and getting all of the kinks worked out in our communications with our end users, and being very clear on that and who we're working with and who we're marketing to, and having hundreds and hundreds of conversations and modifying website and options lists and everything on a weekly basis as we collate all this information. My wife is on the other side of it, so she'll do a lot of the communications and the website. So she learned how to build websites and get really good at that. So again, we're iterating very, very quickly, and we learned that we need to take away options. People can't have too many options, or they just get frozen, and they can't continue the conversation. So it's just constantly being on your game.
Yeah, that's especially in the building phase. That's one of those things that is so exhausting. And I was just having a conversation with somebody this morning. I was talking about anytime you're in that growth phase, it eats up so much capital. Like growing just eats up capital. Even if you're selling things out the other side, you're selling all these houses, it's still like that growth and that trial and error of that building just takes a ton of capital. How did you kind of work through that? You said you're just kind of coming out of it now, but that when you have to make the decision to file Chapter 11 and kind of go through all of that, and what does that look like for you and your wife and the conversations and the team? And like, how did you kind of work through that to make sure that you're keeping everything alive and pumping?
It was just, we have unwavering faith and belief in ourselves. So it's, what do we need to do? What do we need to do to make it another day? And we had to let go of the how of so many things. We have our why, and why we're here, why we're driven, why we want to do these things. And we found that having so much control over the how was severely limiting. When I've got a business plan and here's all these check marks that they need to be done in this specific order and in this specific capacity. And if you hold to that, it can really set you back, because there could be 100 other opportunities there, other conversations, but because you weren't open to anything other than what you laid out, that can be a hindrance. So we've really let go of that. We have really good balance in all the things that we're doing. And we just know there's a huge void in this space, and we're here to have some effect on it. And I can tell you some of my background and why that is so important to me. And that gives us the drive to keep at it.
Yeah, well, let's hear some of that background, because I think that I tell people all the time, like your why is going to make a massive difference in your ability to keep on driving forward. If your why is money, then it's not going to make it happen, right? There's got to be something that's a little bit more passionate behind. So tell me a little bit about what that is behind you that is driving you forward.
So there's a couple elements to it, and one we had, when was this? 2008, 2009. We're looking at our finances, and I just couldn't figure out a way to really make life better. Like, I was looking at all these payoff things, and we didn't have crazy debt outside of, like, we had a house, which wasn't a crazy expense, a single car payment, and a fair amount of student loans. And we're essentially living paycheck to paycheck. And I just, going through all the payoff methods, just couldn't find anything that would help us out in anything short of 15, 20 years. And that got me running down the road of, do I start a business? How do I get there? And why should I work so hard to do it? And what we eventually found was we borrowed money from friends. We lost money on our house that we sold because the development sold off the back half of the development to a cheaper builder. And there were a whole bunch of rentals and everything. So we ended up losing money on the house. We bought the cheapest piece of property out in the country that we could find that was just absolutely trashed. It was a diamond in the rough, had some beautiful trees, but it looked like somebody had 2 mobile homes on it at one point. One of them, they took a stick of dynamite to and blew it up all over the place. And then the other one had trash waist high in it. But we bought that, we built ourselves a tiny house on it, and we were able to reduce our living expenses by 80%. And going from $350,000 to debt and to, break even net worth of 0 in about 3 years or so was hugely relieving. And I know most people aren't going to go through those extremes to do it, but I just think about, like, the 1 in 100 or 1 in 1,000 that, if they have a place in their life where you can take that burden of the living expenses away or essentially reduce it, and they're not just surviving. What's the 1 in 1,000 that thrives and changes the way we look at, the next tech thing or the next space thing or whatever it is? How are they contributing to the society in a greater way? And I may never know that person and may never meet that person, but just the idea of that fascinates me because it really opened me up to the world of possibilities when I didn't have that load on me. And then I build things that last, because I think I bounced around in the foster care system growing up, and I couldn't count on anyone or anything. I wanted some stability. And I think that moves forward into why I build the way I build. These things are going to last a lifetime, so you don't have to worry about them. The investor doesn't have to worry about them. And because you don't have a capital expense, then you don't have to push those reoccurring costs or that capital expense off into rent. So then you don't have to raise the rents as much to the people that need this affordable housing to thrive in their own life. And those are the why we do things on that end of it. On the other side of it, I want to go sail the world. I want to go see the world. I'm only here by happenstance. And we have a deposit on a yacht we're going to have built in France, catamaran. And our intent is to get the business up and running and then go sail around the world, spend at least a decade out there just seeing other cultures and how the rest of the world works and how people communicate and live. And then beyond that, when we have a lot of the resource behind us, I want to protect places. So having traveled around the world, I want to identify places that we want to protect. So whether it's a wildlife preserve, the ocean, an island, that sort of thing, being able to go in there and maybe do an ecotourism or a marina or something that creates business, but funds the protection of that landmass in perpetuity. So something I can just set up and then protect things, because there's so much that are just getting lopped off in the quest for a quick buck. But if I build something big enough that we don't have to worry about any of those things, then we can preserve a lot of the beauty of the world and then keep it going in perpetuity without any, without having to manage it is the idea.
Awesome. So, it sounds like even like your personal life and your business life, you're trying to make sure that you are utilizing the right tools, the right materials inside of your homes that you're building to make sure that those last a very long time. And in turn, you're going to be, wanting to do the same thing to, our planet and nature and where everything's at to make sure that it lasts a really long time as well. And the two of those, too many people may look at one side or the other and say, okay, one of them's got to sacrifice, but you're trying to find some ways to make both of them survive in the long term. I love that. So, and as you're kind of building this out and talking to folks about this, how much are you able to align your personal desires and vision for that ecotourism and that sort of stuff with the business side? So when you're talking to, maybe it's investors, maybe it's partners or whatever, to be like, hey, this is kind of my overall vision and desire for the business. How are you correlating those two together when you're chatting with folks so that they can kind of see the grander vision rather than just, oh yeah, we're building houses that last longer? I think
it's been a little more difficult for me to correlate the two. I've found in those conversations that most people don't tend to look too far in the future. And I've even had conversations with charitable organizations, and I start thinking about or start talking to investments and ways that they could move forward 5-10 years down the road, and like it hasn't even crossed their mind yet. It almost kind of muddles the water in the conversation. I speak to the comfort that building differently can attain and the savings. So whether there's time savings, there's energy savings, and there's just a comfort and a feel to things that you can't get when you build cheaply. Like touch points are a big thing. You want all of your touch points to feel solid. Anytime there's something that's hollow or chintzy or feels like it might fall off, there's just this subconscious thing that just hits you, and inherently people won't take care of it as well because they already feel like, oh well, it's already fallen apart. And then there's building science, and I'm a nerd for building science, and that there's some things that we can do to make the homes healthier and more comfortable, and things that you wouldn't necessarily understand. But like, I have humidity sensing bath fans in all of our units and everything that I've built, even the houses and everything. You don't have to worry about somebody turning on the bath fan. It's hardwired and it turns on when it needs to be on, and then it brings the humidity level down to where it needs to be without thinking about it. And then you don't get the musty smell. And then pairing that with variable refrigerant flow AC systems. So mini splits use this technology, but there's other systems that you can use that will run longer using less energy, but they inherently bring the humidity level down, which in the hot, humid South where we're at is a big deal. Because if you've got relative humidity over 50-55%, then there's enough moisture in the walls for mold, for termites, for dust mites, all the biological stuff that you don't want growing in there. But if you can just keep that down to a reasonable level, then you don't have any of those issues. Then you don't have any of those things that are destroying your walls from within. We speak more to those pieces as opposed to the timescale stuff. For sure. And I think, it obviously depends on who you talk to, tell the story that makes the most sense for the person you're talking to. Right. And, I really appreciate that you've got both sides of that. Well, Darren, it's been awesome kind of learning a little bit more about what you have going on and, the building. I'm going to have to go research a little bit more myself and kind of dig into it because that's it sounds fun to just kind of understand a little bit more. So if folks are hearing this and they want to know and they want to reach out, maybe they're investors, they want to reach out to you and kind of learn a little bit more about what you have going on the investor side, or maybe whether it's investing with you or they're real estate investors and they want to buy some of your homes. What's the best way for folks to be able to reach out to you? Our website is modular.com. modular.com. I guess so. Pretty simple. On all the socials, the same hashtag or @. And yeah, well, we reach out very, very quickly and very interested in doing production runs of things for parks, for developments. We can do custom projects. We can do multi-story. But we're most cost effective, and we can have huge price reductions when we're doing production runs of things.
Awesome. So modular.com, reach out to Darren. Really appreciate you again, Darren, jumping on. I thank everybody for listening. Please reach out to Darren if he can serve you in any way. Really looking forward to some feedback on the episode. So please like, subscribe, comment below. Let us know what your favorite part of it was. Reach out to Darren if he can serve you in any way. Thank you again, Darren. Thank you for everybody listening, and we will see everybody on the next show.
Cheers.